Hi, good afternoon. My name is Marcos Reynoso, and I will be talking about Node.js and TCP/IP. So the overview will be introduction to TCP/IP, what is a TCP socket, TCP server and client applications, the demo, and small intro to streams. But let's go over some concepts and terminologies first. So the OSI model is basically a logical model which defines how network systems are supposed to communicate with each other. And it just basically breaks down every component and slots it into a layer depending on what it does. So as you can see in the application level, in the application layer, we have our usual FTP protocol, HTTP protocols, but we're gonna take a step down to the transport layer, which has TCP, and the network layer, which has IP. So what is a TCP? It's basically a transmission control protocol, that's its definition, and it's a standard that defines how to establish and maintain a connection which applications are supposed to send data. And a virtual port is basically a mechanism which avoids conflicts on incoming data. And they have, like, for example, you have like a set of ports, like they go from 0 to 65,535, which, like, the first set, it's basically dedicated to the application layer protocols, like HTTP is basically 80 and FTP is 20 and 21, for example. And the internet protocol layer. This is the layer that's responsible for addressing the hosts and that actually send the data through the network, and it gives an address to the host and the source and the destination. And we have two versions of this. It's basically the standard one that it's IPv4. You've probably seen this one before, but we also have implementations on IPv6, which most likely your routers at home already have this implemented by the ISP. And yeah, so like a fun project will be like some old routers actually have the hardware to flash like the software on it so it could support this. So you might want to have a look at that, unless like you actually like mess up the flashing process, and that's not going to be fun. So a TCP socket, basically. A TCP socket is an endpoint of a two-way communication, and it's always bound to a port. Let's say, for example, like as you can see in the diagram, you have the client, it makes a request, and then when the server actually hears that request, it creates an instance of a socket and binds it to a port. So it knows like from what address it's actually receiving that information. And the same thing happens, like as you can see in the second diagram, when the server sends back information, it actually does the same process, and then that communication is established. So how everything is connected, it's basically like how TCP works. In step one, you can see that TCP breaks like the data into packets, and then in the second step is that the IP basically like routes the packets step by step, like little by little, if you have like a great amount of data going through. And then at the end point, like the TCP reassembles it as a whole at the end. And some applications, as like lower level applications of the TCP, you can actually use it as an internal transferring tool if you want to develop that in an intranet. And like lower level hardware network connections, like if you want to implement a software that controls like an assembly line, like machinery related. And so like some people just go down to this type of development if they want to add like a security level over their applications. And a little demo that I created. So basically, Node gives you like tools, integrated tools to create a TCP server and a TCP client. I'm actually using the net integrated module, And as you can see here, wait a minute, so here I'm starting like a server, as you can see in port, this is in on port 9000. And basically, so here's just, you set it up, it's real simple. So it's a real simple example. If you're probably gonna implement this in a production level, probably want to like put secure levels over this or something that makes it secure so you won't have like incoming like people trying to access your servers in that kind of way. So in this example, I'm using packet sender, which I'm gonna send raw data through the server and it's gonna make a connection. So in my first demonstration, I'm just gonna do like I'm just gonna send one packet and it's gonna close the connection like we will usually see using an express server. So in this instance, it actually converts like the full stack like text to hexadecimals. And yeah, so as you can see here, the data came through. It assigned a port here. It's basically 50, 46, 2. I don't know if you can see it there. And yeah, and in here you can actually see the response back in here. It keeps on that one. He's going like from port, as you can see. And let's do an example where we will want a persistent connection. Let's say like, you know, with browsers, you can actually have a persistent connection unless you have like a library like Socket.io. But I'll explain that a little bit later on. So basically, we want to send like a persistent TCP packet where it's going to establish that connection using that port. So as you can see, it basically it created a socket and it actually it binded it to another port. As you can see, this one is 50.46.2 and the new connection is 50.46.3. But in this instance, all the connection is basically open, so you can actually send more information with that unless you close the actual connection. As you can see, we keep on the same port number. Yeah. So close that. Yeah, and when you're the server is actually listening to that port to know when the connection is closed. So let's go to the code real quick. I actually imported the net that's provided by Node, and it acts as an event listener. Like on the connection, it actually creates a socket instance like I mentioned before. And then on that socket, it's listening on that port. So it knows when the data is coming through, when the actual instance is closed, and if it has an error. So you have all those tools provided by Node. And then you're just like attaching that server like we will do it with Express. And I also went ahead and created a TCP client with the same library. Just started. Okay, so in this case, I had to create like a little menu so we could actually control the data, like the data that we send to the server. So the menu is like, for example, the first one I made a function that opens a connection. The second one lets you transmit the consistent data. And the third one, we just close the connection. So let's just go through that. Let's just go through the example first. Like, for example, you want to open a connection. As you can see, it added to that one also. Yeah, so we have a 50.46.4, because it's another connection on this instance. And you could actually, and then now we want to send data on this. So we want to send on full stack. So we actually have that, and the connection is still open. As you can see, like we don't have the prompt that is closed yet. We're gonna keep on sending information on that, and then to close it, You just hit that. So yeah. And the code for this, you have to set a host on it, like where you want to send it at. In this instance, we just want to send it to to this computer, but like you could use this across the network. You have to set the port on which the destination is going to listen to the information that you're sending to. So yeah, and then I create like a fallback. If the connection is already open, it will just prompt out it's already open. And then here I create a socket, like I mentioned before, and I assign it to a client, and then it also provides you with listeners. Yeah, and then here we just send data to client, so like client.write, and we can close the connection, and it destroys the socket instance as destroy. Yep. So going back, so how is this all working with Node? This is working with streams. Streams is a big concept, so I'm just going to give you an introduction here. It's the basic I/O of a Node process. It's a data flow concept, and it uses buffer like to break down the data into packets. It also has event emitters if you want to look into that and actually use streams to send data. And it has 3 types: readable, writable, and duplex, with which the TCP sockets use. And just to add a little note at the end, browsers in 2011 implemented what we call WebSockets. It's a synthetic TCP socket that you could actually use to keep on transferring like data, and that's where libraries like Socket.io were created to implement WebSockets, and they actually like have a hybrid between between WebSockets and AJAX polling systems. So that's why Socket.io is really like heavily used on the market. Thank you very much.